Of all the areas that NIRS focused on, the public transportation sector was found to be one of the most affected, and it was realized as necessary to be thoroughly assessed in relation to economic impact and infection control measures of COVID-19 through a dedicated research.
COVID-19 has affected global economy very seriously. Nepal, an economy of about $30 billion plus was seriously affected also. Public transportation sector is the one which is most affected because of the measures that we took to mitigate the impact of COVID. So it's a very serious effect, and reviving the sector, which is public transport sector, but it's basically owned by the private owners, private operators. And 80% of those vehicles, the operators, are operating it on the basis of whatever they get as a loan from the banks. In transport sector, the small owners, daily operators and others, they are disproportionately affected.
Due to 3 months long lockdown, the sector suffered huge financial losses on one hand, and on the other hand, it was quite a challenge to change the perception of public regarding health safety in public vehicles. NIRS got a partnering opportunity to assess the public transportation sector in depth through an international call for a research grant from High Volume Transport Applied Research Program funded by UK Aid.
We applied for an international competition and got this opportunity to work with these two organizations. NIRS regularly competes and participates in this kind of international competitions for research collaboration. After research proposal was accepted by SBT, we had regular communication with SBT team for finalization of different tools and methods to be used in the research.
So this research looked at both ends. It looked at how the sector can be revived economically and what economic assistance packages would be best for the purpose of recovering the sector, and also to look into what measures individual operators, the government and other stakeholders can take in order to resume the operation of public transportation system. The other feature of Nepali public transportation system is that it has a vehicle mix of quite a variety. There are buses, there are three-wheelers, there are microbuses, there are motorcycle taxis, and there are regular cab taxis. So we also wanted to evaluate in relative terms which of the vehicles is riskier than the other. So we thought that there should be ways of infection-related risk for passengers as they take these vehicles.
The data required in this research was collected through primary and secondary sources.
I found both in primary and in secondary information that we collected from both government and private sectors. There are a lot of data gap and inconsistency in data collected from different institutions even within the government. And during the survey, just to compensate for the data that were not available, we carried out primary survey for these vehicles. We used a random stratified sampling technique for calculating the sample size, but due to constraint in terms of time and resources, the sample size that we decided was very low, and if you go for a bigger sample size taking more time, it will lose its relevance. And as far as the limitations are concerned, these informations are very much contextual and temporal, because due to this COVID-19 it was changing very rapidly on a daily basis.
The findings from the research suggest that there has been many small and medium scale innovations in order to cope up the effects of lockdown.
On the whole, the experience of this COVID in urban sector, which was our area of research, is that there have been some very interesting innovations also, how people cope with this kind of crisis. There are some innovations. particularly in the area of individually operated certain vehicles like motorbikes, and then supplies through electronic means, and home supplies of foods and other commodities for the people under this partially open situation. These are some kind of innovative things that should be encouraged, I think.
The findings from this research indicated the need for change in government policy and the operating system of public transport.
During the lockdown, people walked, people bicycled, and sometimes people used their motorbikes. However, after the lockdown was lifted, people were reluctant to use the public transport because they thought that the perception was that it is the most vulnerable area where virus will transmit. But after the government issued the directives for operating the public transport, people got some kind of confidence and they started using the microbus, big buses, taxis, tempos, and the motorbike taxis. And we found that the people feel safer in the motorbike taxis. The ride-sharing mode of transportation was the most popular. They had that perception that there is a less risk in that one. Taxis, because in taxis the occupancy rate is very, very low. Only 3 people, maximum 3 people, or even 2 people were allowed to ride on the taxi. Regarding the big buses, there was some kind of protocol. People used physical distance, people use a mask and sanitizers. And some of the buses, the operators of the buses, they had provision of these sanitizers in their vehicle, and the buses were clean. So the research finding showed that the microbuses are the most vulnerable.
Motorcycle taxis are the safest, and this has been talked about elsewhere in the world too, because you have this headwind coming into you, and that creates an environment of very good ventilation. By the same measure, some of the smaller buses with small cabin size and low ventilation were determined to be more risky. And so we have made recommendations in order to improve the infection control measures within such vehicles, and also advocated for promoting vehicles that are accepted by the public and also is safe from an epidemiological angle.
By the end of our research, we came up with a policy brief that has been presented to the Ministry of Physical Infrastructures and Transport to revive the sector from the impact of COVID-19. In addition, a set of suggestions were also presented to public vehicle owners on safe reopening of public vehicles operation in the times of COVID-19.
As an institution, we gain few important things from this research. The research capacity of NIRS has enhanced from this research experience. This is relatively new research area for NIRS, and also it was the first collaboration with SBT. The other is the international networking. We got opportunity to interact and participate in some of the networking events organized by SBT, where we got chance to interact with other international research organizations and academia. We believe that the findings will be very useful for not only for Nepalese government or the public vehicle operators, but also in the regional scale and also in the international level, given the vehicle mix of the particular country or the region is same as that of Nepal.